All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio Root Sheva. And the show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free to do so. You, of course, can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. And you can check me out on JApp. That is a Jewish application that has Shirim, as well as episodes of this program. That could be found at www.j-app.me, and you can download JApp from iTunes or from Google Play stores. This particular episode is a very special episode. Our correspondent Shira Nussdorf has gotten interviews with friends and family of the 4 Kedoshim who were murdered in France at a kosher supermarket just before Shabbat, a few hours before Shabbat. So we're going to play that in part 1, and then we will go to break and then have part 2 on the other side. So without further ado, here is Shira Nussdorf.
You're listening to a very special French edition of Is It Prophecy on Israel National News Radio. My name is Shira, and I'm an Ole Chadasha, a new immigrant to Israel from New York. I made Aliyah about a year ago out of love for my Jewish people and support for the State of Israel. One of my favorite things to do is talk to Jews from around the world and welcome them home, but when I heard that 4 French men would be laid to rest in Jerusalem after being victims of terrorism in Paris, I was absolutely brokenhearted that these men and their families were coming here under such sad circumstances. What was life like for my French Jewish brothers and sisters on an everyday basis? Was this attack on a kosher supermarket Erev Shabbos an isolated incident, or is it part of a rise in anti-Semitism that the Jewish world not only needs to be made aware of, but to do something about? Did you know that in 2014, 6,600 Jews made Aliyah from France? Now compare that to 3,400 in 2013 and 1,920 in 2012. That's almost double every year. And as grateful as I am that people are coming, the numbers are alarming. What's really going on? I took it upon myself to find the emes, the truth, about why the French are not just coming but running to Israel. On this show, we'll hear from Jean Charles, who made Aliyah from France 4 months ago, and his friend from Ulpan, Laurence, as they discuss public opinion and the open anti-Semitism Jews face in Paris. We'll hear from Jennifer and Isaac, who recount different ways Jews face discrimination on a daily basis. And I must tell you, I was so disturbed by what I heard. It's become one of my new goals of the year to not only give French people a voice on Israel National News Radio, but to help the community produce programs that will encourage and support French immigration and life in Israel. On the second half of Visit Prophecy, we'll hear interviews recorded at the Levaya and Shiva from friends and family of the deceased, and upcoming events that foster unity and French support. You'll hear all of that on this episode of Is It Prophecy on Israel National News Radio. The show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour, and if you want to get involved, please email us at messiahhour@gmail.com.
Bonjour, I am with Jean-Charles Bemsoussan. He's an Ole Chadash, a new French immigrant, and he's going to speak to us today about his experience with anti-Semitism in France and why he chose to make Aliyah. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm so sorry to see the recent events unfolding in Paris. Is it a surprise to you?
It does not come as a surprise because we have seen this process going on for many years now. And the most important wave of anti-Semitism started in France around 2003. And then many Jews decided to leave France. And for us, for me in particular, it was easier to go to the US because of the difficulty to have degree recognition in Israel. And I got also, I think, the wrong information. And they told me at that time that I should have to take an exam in Hebrew, which turned in fact that it was wrong information. I could have taken the exam in English or in French, but at that time I was told to take it in Hebrew. That was for me a no.
But let's back up for a second and remember 2003. What was it that motivated you to want to leave the country that you were born and I'm sure loved?
There were a lot of anti-Semitic attacks at that time, and the French government, I think it was around the Second Iraq War, and the French government was so pro-Muslim that as Jews we felt very, very badly.
In what way did the government's policies affect you or your family on a personal level?
We saw that there was a big distortion of the information toward Israel and toward the US, and the media and most of the government members, when they talked about the situation, there was a constant bias against Israel and against America, and, by the way, against the Jews, and we felt very, very bad.
Joining Jean-Charles is his friend Laurence from his Opan class. Bonjour, Laurence.
Bonjour.
Where in France are you from?
I am from Marseille, near Marseille.
And have you ever seen anti-Semitism in France?
Yes, of course.
Can you describe to me what you see?
J'ai pas vu, mais j'ai surtout entendu propos antisémites comme les juifs. Après, c'est surtout sur les juifs d'Israël qu'on entend des choses.
Yeah, she said that she did not witness directly because she was not concerned, but she heard a lot about the very old canal, that the Jews love money, they are greedy, they just want to get rich, and all those classical theme of very old French anti-Semitism.
What do you mean by you're not concerned? Are you Jewish?
I'm not Jewish, no.
So, je suis no juif. How would you say that?
Je ne suis pas juive.
Je suis pas juif. So, you're not Jewish yourself, but you heard anti-Semitic rhetoric or statements that other people have made about Jewish people. Is that correct?
Right, c'est ça?
Yes, it's correct.
Now you're in Israel, and I guess you know a lot of Jewish people. Of the things that you heard, that they were greedy,
ready to lie, to make a good deal, to cheat on people.
and yet you moved to Israel. Is that your experience with the actual Jewish people that you know, that they are this way?
No, not at all. I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I love them. And now I live in an apartment, and mes amis, French.
An apartment that belongs to a Jewish friend, and
ils me le prêtent gratuitement.
Yes, they let her enjoy the apartment for free without a rent. And
No,
they are not good Jews by French standard. By French standard, they are not good Jews, you know.
And what about maybe the perception that French have on Israel, on the conditions of Israel? Now that you can come here and objectively see you're not Jewish, you're not thinking that your people are perfect, what is your impression on Israel as a neutral observer?
Where I live, I never seen anything. All is normal, like in France or everywhere. I don't see something special against Arabic. Just I see that some people are afraid. Some Jewish are afraid when they meet Arabic people, but nothing more.
Why do you think they're afraid?
They say, some of them, not all, but some of young people, they said, I don't like to be alone with them. I don't know what they can do.
Have you met Arab people that are afraid of Jewish people?
No.
Why do you think that is?
Qu'est-ce que je pense que...
Ouais. Pourquoi ils n'ont pas peur? Parce qu'ils n'ont pas de raison d'avoir peur.
Ouais, they have no reason to be afraid, yes.
Bonsoir, Jennifer Uzan, Isaac Cohen. How are you this evening?
Bonsoir, Shira.
Bonsoir, Shira.
So Friday was a very hard day for people in France. Can you tell me a little bit about what you heard from your friends or family?
Oui, quand j'ai reçu la liste pour prier pour les personnes qui étaient à l'intérieur du supermarché.
Actually, she knew someone that basically, when she got the list to pray Tehillim, she saw a name of one of her friends, and she got really scared of that. And then she saw right before Shabbat that 4 people died. She got even more scared, and when Shabbat came out, she learned that her friend was actually hiding in the bathroom of the grocery store, and thank God she was safe.
Wow, Baruch Hashem. But from what we all saw, there were 3 days of being in absolute terror in France. Did you hear from any of your friends or family what it might have been like during those 3 days when there were murderers running around the streets?
Les personnes que j'ai eues au téléphone ou qui m'ont parlé via WhatsApp ou Facebook.
What Jennifer is saying is that people were really worried to send children to the school, and that was something that people were actually very fear. I know a few people that actually kept the children at home, and that was the biggest fear was mostly towards the parents and the children.
What about the things that we've seen on the news, the rising anti-Semitism in France? Do people really feel that, or is that just highlighted media sensationalism?
Je pense que c'est plus les médias qui vont faire peur que la montée de l'antisémitisme, parce que je pense que l'antisémitisme est toujours là en France. C'est quelque chose de constant.
So Jennifer is saying that the French culture incorporates anti-Semitism, and it's kind of like in the belief of the French people there is anti-Semitism and natural anti-Semitism. Now the media are a big part of it, as they're actually making it big and making it constant to remind people that there should be something against the Jews. The Muslim community is growing tremendously and the Jews is actually diminishing, but for some reason the media are still talking about and making anti-Semitism being part of everyday life of Jewish people.
Qui monte en France, qui est là en France en fait.
Jennifer is saying that you have those big events that we just saw with the Hyper Cacher, with Toulouse, with Ilan Halimi, but there is a constant act of anti-Semitism every day that actually nobody speaks about, but they are every day. People coming out of the shul and they're being maced, throwing stones. Those ones are the ones that we're talking about, the big ones. But it became so like in everyday's life that nobody talks about it.
One of the things that the terrorist in the kosher supermarket said was that he was upset about the laws that prohibit women from wearing a full covering, and somebody explained that as part of secularism. What is secularism in France, and who does it affect?
Dans les écoles, déjà, je pense que c'est très important. Enfin, aujourd'hui, ils ont mis des lois dans les écoles, c'est-à-dire en dessous l'université, avant l'université.
Jennifer is saying that there was always, a laicity in a secular in school, you're not allowed to wear kippah or chador, and there's an equality. But once the Muslims decided to revolt against the rules of France, so it became also apparent that they would revolt against putting the chador in school.
So you, as a man, I'm looking at you now, and you're here in Jerusalem, and you're wearing a kippah, you're wearing a yarmulke, a head covering. Would you not be able to wear this if you were going to school in France?
Yes, and we know a lot of friends that when they had to pass the bar exam or other things, they couldn't wear a yarmulke. I just want to add also that the big problem in France for school and university is that many exams fall on Shabbat. And one of the big work of the Chief Rabbi of France, Rav Sitruk, was actually to intervene with the President of France to move those dates to a Sunday or a Monday. And they refused. Many lawyers or doctors failed or had to take another year upon themselves in order to redo those exams because they fell on Shabbat.
Why couldn't they just move them to Sunday or Monday or any other day? Why did they have to be there if they knew a large population would not be able to take those tests?
They would call it nepotism. They would call it favoritism towards the Jewish people. An exam is an exam, that's the dates, and it's a secular country, and there's no difference whether you're going to take it or not.
Parce que ils n'ont pas voulu. Et pourtant, on était un grand groupe de personnes pratiquantes.
Jennifer is saying that certainly that's part of the reason why people would make the Aliyah, as she witnessed herself that she had to fail 2 years of her studies at La Sorbonne because the exam at the end of the year fell on Shabbat. She also had 2 friends that went for orthophonist, which is a speech therapist, and they couldn't finish their studies because all the exams were always falling on Shabbat, and they had to make Aliyah in order to finish their study. So it is a constant struggle, a person who wants actually to be career-oriented.
Are there programs set up here to help French people making Aliyah that are specifically geared for French people?
On était plusieurs personnes, on était très impliqués.
So there is a lot of programs, first of all, for internship, yeshivas, seminaries, midrasha, that enables young people to get a taste of Israel and see if that's for them and if that speaks to them. And Jennifer is recommending strongly anyone who has that opportunity to take it and come and see what's the life here.
Is it only for young people? Because I spoke with a man today. He was a doctor. His name is Jean-Charles. And he was saying that he didn't know about programs. He said he wished there was something like Nefesh B'Nefesh for French people.
There is something called, for example, Alia de Group, which is basically, many of my friends did it. It's few families, they get together and they get to know each other within a year. And they even have like barbecues and trips in Israel as they get closer together, and then they move together to Israel. It's an easy way, meaning the social circle is already pre-made, so that it's easier to integrate the Israeli life. One of the main founder of this program, his name is Shalom Vax, and he probably already brought like something like 600 families in Israel with that program. There is no Nefesh B'Nefesh is a subsidiary of the Sachnut HaYehudit. In France, there is no Nefesh B'Nefesh. There is no subs. There is actually, you go to the Sachnut HaYehudit, which exists in Paris. You go and you apply directly. The Agence Juive, which is the Sachnut HaYehudit, basically the Israeli government put kind of organization in Paris straight up that you can apply for Aliyah. They create right now seminaries for professionals. For example, opticians who would like to go to Israel, they're going to have seminaries all together, where the Sochnut will explain how to be integrated and how to practice the job in Israel. And there is many different things like opticians, doctors, and many other dentists, lawyers. There would be many different professionals that the Sochnut is creating seminaries for them in order for them to make Aliyah. And it's easier because you're among colleagues, you're among people in the same profession.
Mais il faut que la demande soit là.
But the program is there, the program exists, but the people don't look for the information. So that's why it's not as popular as it should be.
Well, I really hope that you telling us about it here on the radio will help people know more information about it. There's been a lot of rallying in support of what happened for the victims in France, both of the Charlie attacks and in the supermarket. Do you feel supported by the world?
What I'm wondering if that massacre would have happened in a Jewish institution, for instance, Chas v'Shalom, people would have come out in the street the same way they come out for Charlie Hebdo. Charlie Hebdo right now raised about 3.7 million people outside in the street protesting against terrorism in France. Did anybody spoke about the hypermarché? Did anybody spoke about that those Jewish people who suffered in Toulouse? There was no such a rally when this happened in Toulouse. So it gives me a lot of frustration to feel that the French people actually, I don't think they don't give the support to Jewish people the way it should be.
If I can say a few words of comfort to you, in last week's Parsha, when we saw that our brothers and sisters in France were being terrorized and we didn't know what was happening, Shabbat came as everything was unfolding, we didn't know what was happening. I read the Parsha very closely, and I read in the Parsha that when Pharaoh tries to kill the Jewish babies and he sends an order, commands all the Jewish baby boys to be killed, Miriam, Moses' sister, a woman, stands up to her parents and she says, "What about the girls?" She fights for the women, and she fights, and a boy is born, Moshe Rabbeinu. Not only that we see when the decree comes that the Jews should work harder and suffer more and kill the babies, then God blesses the women with 6 babies at a time. And Rashi brings down that whenever a force will try and destroy the Jewish population, then God will come and raise his hand to protect it. And so it's so sad and so tragic what we see happening to your brothers and sisters in France. But we can only look to this week's Parsha, where Moses goes with God's help and speaks to the Jewish people and tells them to get up and that they will be free and that they will go to a land of Israel where they'll have milk and honey and brothers and sisters and freedom to keep their religious practices. And despite the constant bickering back and forth between Moses and Pharaoh, all the plagues that befall Pharaoh because he's being stubborn, the Jews do prevail and they do come home. And so I wish you this blessing and this message of comfort that even at our darkest moment that we're seeing right now, I'm sitting here with 2 Jews in Israel, a place where Moses never even got to go. Both of you are giving messages of love and comfort and bienvenue, welcoming your brothers and sisters to come. So if the Parsha of this week is any indication of what will happen, then I'll stand with you at the funeral of your brothers, even though I myself am not French. It's one of the most beautiful things that we as Jewish people do is stand by each other when we're sad and dance with each other when we're happy. So if you'll come with me to the funeral, I would love to go with you and stand in solidarity and support. Je suis juif.
Et fier de l'être.
Et fier de l'être.
I'm proud of it. Et fier de l'être.
You're listening to Is It Prophecy at Israel National News Radio. The show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. And if you want to know more about Aleh, to act, to link, to explore, the French Aliyah program that Jennifer and Isaac were speaking about, you could email us at themessiahhour@gmail.com. Or you could go to the Tu B'Shvat event on February 3rd at 7 p.m., 8 Echadam, where they'll be honoring Yoav, Yoham, Francois Michel, and Philippe. On the second half of Is It Prophecy, we'll be going to the Levaya and speaking with two French citizens who made Aliyah as they explain what life was like for them in France and why they chose to relocate to Eretz Israel. We'll also be going to the Shiva call and speaking with Elisheva, Philippe Brahman's niece, as she describes her uncle's love for Shabbat.
שירה מעלות ממעמקים קראתיך אדוני אדוני שמע בקולי תהיינה אוזניך קשובות לכל תחנוני מעוונות תשמורי אדוני מי יעמוד עמך סליחה למען תברא קיוויתי אדוני כי ושא נפשי ולדברו חנתי נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר